Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The stars glittered against the inky blackness of space, each one a tiny beacon of hope. For centuries, they had represented a universe where peace was possible, a galaxy where humans and aliens alike coexisted within the grand halls of the Galactic Union. The distant lights of the stars had shone down on countless negotiations, interstellar summits, and treaties that bound the great species together in uneasy harmony. But now, those lights seemed colder, distant, and indifferent to the chaos that was about to unfold. Victor Hale stood in his office, high above the sprawling capital city of New Terra, his reflection faint against the thick glass. Beyond the glistening towers, starships darted through the atmosphere like fireflies. He could feel the pulse of power humming through the walls of the building at his building. The citizens of New Terra had spoken, casting their votes, and he had risen to the seat of power on the wave of human supremacy. "We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy," Hale had said in his fiery campaign speeches. "For too long, we have been shackled by treaties, by the weakness of appeasing the alien scum that infest our space. Humanity was meant to ascend, to rule, and under my leadership, we will take our place as the dominant force in the stars." Now, with the election behind him, his rise to power had shifted from words to action. His first act had been to implement sweeping policies that stripped non-humans of their rights within human-controlled territories. Alien workers were rounded up, their contracts voided. Alien businesses, once flourishing in human space, were seized by the state. The grand architecture of cooperation that had taken generations to build was torn down in a matter of weeks. And the galaxy watched. The Council of Allied Species, once the bastion of unity, issued their ultimatum from the gleaming towers of Siluria Prime. Hale's eyes narrowed as he read the transmission again. The Council's demands were clear: reverse the anti-alien policies or face the full might of the coalition. It was a warning, one backed by the fleets of the Xylurians, the Cthr, the Vormulans, and dozens of other species who had spent decades alongside humans in the Union. They had built together, traded together, fought side by side against the void threats from beyond the galaxy. But now, under Hale's rule, they saw humanity as the threat. Hale crumpled the transmission in his fist and turned away from the window. "Prepare the fleets," he growled to his military advisor, General Marcus Lee. "We will not be threatened by these aliens. We will not bow to their demands." Lee hesitated, his lips tightening into a thin line. He was a soldier, born and bred for duty, but even he could feel the tension stretching to a breaking point. The idea of open war with the coalition was reckless. The alien species had strength in numbers, and their technologies were more advanced than humanity's in many areas. But Lee had served Hale for years. He had stood by him through the rise to power, believing that Hale's vision of human dominance was the key to survival in an increasingly hostile universe. "Understood, sir," Lee said after a moment, turning to carry out the orders. His steps were heavy as he walked down the corridors of the military command center. Deep inside, a part of him questioned if they were making the right move. Across the galaxy, on Aurelia 7, a mining colony that had long supplied the Union with vital resources, the skies turned crimson with the arrival of alien warships. The attack was swift, merciless. The colony's defenses crumbled in hours. Human settlements burned under the relentless barrage from Cthulhu war cannons, the air thick with the screams of those caught in the crossfire. It was the first strike of many. News of the attack spread like wildfire, igniting panic and fear across human space. The alien coalition's message was clear: Hale's regime would not be tolerated. Humanity had overstepped its bounds, and now the cost would be blood. In the shadow of these attacks, humanity was thrown into disarray. For the first time in generations, the galaxy seemed to be slipping toward total war. Hale's propaganda machine spun the narrative quickly, branding the aliens as aggressors, framing the war as a fight for survival rather than one of Hale's making. Human news channels blasted images of burning colonies, the faces of weeping survivors, and the rallying cry of humanity first, echoed across the stars. Elena Torres sat in her modest apartment on New Terra, her heart heavy as she watched the news unfold. Once, she had been a diplomat for the Galactic Union, working to bridge the gaps between species, fostering understanding and cooperation. But those days seemed like a distant memory now. Hale's rise to power had swept away everything she had worked for, leaving her disillusioned and frustrated. The alien attacks filled her with a deep sense of dread, not just for humanity but for the galaxy as a whole. She knew what Hale was capable of, and she feared that the war would spiral out of control, dragging every species into the abyss of destruction. Elena, a voice broke her from her thoughts. She turned to see Jasper, one of the leaders of the resistance, standing in the doorway. The resistance had formed in secret, a group of humans who opposed Hale's extremist policies. They were small, underfunded, and constantly watched by Hale's secret police, but they were growing. "We have to act," Jasper said, his voice urgent. "The longer Hale stays in power, the more lives will be lost. We have to find a way to stop this war before it destroys us all." Elena nodded, her mind racing. The resistance had been working in the shadows, trying to expose Hale's corruption, but it was a dangerous game. His grip on the government was strong, and any misstep could mean death. But now, with the galaxy at war, they had no choice. If they didn't act, millions more would die. The galaxy descended into chaos. One by one, human colonies fell to the alien coalition's relentless assault. Calypso 5, a once thriving metropolis, was reduced to rubble within days. The Vormulans, masters of cybernetic warfare, unleashed devastating viruses that crippled human communication networks, leaving fleets stranded and isolated. Despite Hale's bravado, humanity was outmatched. The coalition's technology far surpassed anything Hale's military could muster. Alien fleets, sleek and deadly, outnumbered human forces in every battle. Hale's generals struggled to hold the line, but the tide of war was turning against them. General Marcus Lee stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, the flagship of the human fleet, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. The view from the bridge was grim of human ships, scattered and burning, barely holding their formation against the onslaught of Kthor war cruisers. "General, we're losing the outer perimeter," his tactical officer reported, his voice strained. "The aliens are pressing their advantage. We won't be able to hold this sector for much longer." Lee's jaw clenched. He had known this was coming. The aliens were too powerful, too well coordinated. Every victory Hale had promised was slipping away. General Lee watched the holographic display flicker as the battle deteriorated further. Smoke filled the air on the bridge of the Sovereign, and alarms blared, alerting them to Hell breaches in multiple sectors. Despite his years of service, Lee had never witnessed such a relentless onslaught. The alien coalition was pressing harder than ever before, capitalizing on every human weakness, every tactical mistake. "Withdraw the remaining ships to Sector 4, Lee commanded, his voice steady, though inside he knew they were running out of options. "We'll make our stand there." His officers scrambled to comply, but the reality was clearer. They were fighting a losing war. The fleet was fractured, the morale shattered. Lee couldn't help but wonder if this was how it was always meant to be. Humanity's hubris laid bare in the face of overwhelming alien superiority. He glanced at the tactical map, where red dots representing enemy ships vastly outnumbered the blue of his forces. There was no way to win this conventionally. In the distance, Earth loomed blue, fragile, and vulnerable. It had been decades since humanity had fought a war on its home turf, but now, with the coalition knocking at the doorstep of the Sol system, it was only a matter of time. Lee's thoughts drifted to his family, Safia at least for now and on a secure base near Mars. He couldn't allow the enemy to breach Earth. "Not yet, General," came a voice behind him. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Resistance. It's her broken bar Elena Torres. She says they've made contact with the Xylorian commander. They want to negotiate a ceasefire." Lee's gaze snapped toward the communications officer. The Resistance. Elena. He had known her once, before the war, when she was a diplomat fighting to keep peace alive. The idea of a ceasefire sounded like a distant dream now. But if anyone could pull it off, it was her. "Put her through," Lee said, his tone softening slightly. A moment later, Elena's voice crackled over the comms. "General Lee, we don't have much time. I've made contact with Senkel, the Xylorian Supreme Commander. They're willing to stop the attack if Hale is removed from power. But they're on the verge of a final assault. If we don't act now, Earth will fall." Lee's throat tightened. He had known Hale's extremism was leading them toward destruction, but he had remained loyal out of duty. Now, that loyalty felt misplaced. Hale had not only led humanity into a losing war but was prepared to obliterate everything in a final act of defiance. There was no reasoning with a man who had gone this far. "What do you propose?" Lee asked. Elena's response was immediate. "We need to take down Hale from the inside. You and I both know there are people within his administration who've been waiting for the right moment. That moment is now. I have proof of Hale's corruption, evidence that he's been selling human military secrets to rogue factions. We can expose him, but we need your support." Lee's mind raced. It was a risky move. Mutiny against the president would fracture the military, but Hale had already torn the fabric of human society. A coup might be the only way to save what remained. "I'll rally what support I can," Lee said, steeling his resolve. "But you need to act quickly, Elena. The coalition won't wait forever. We're on our way to Earth. If we don't stop him, Hale will activate the Annihilator." The Annihilator. Lee felt his stomach churn at the thought. He had heard whispers of the weapon, a doomsday device designed to end entire planets in a single strike. No one in the military had wanted to believe Hale would actually use it, but the way things were going, it seemed all too possible. "I'll meet you in New Terra," Lee said. "We'll put an end to this." The transmission cut off, and Lee turned back to his officers. "Prepare a jump to Earth, and keep this quiet. We can't afford any leaks." As the ship powered up its jump drives, Lee's thoughts turned once again to Hale. The man who had promised human supremacy was now leading them to annihilation. But if Lee and Elena succeeded, there was still a chance to salvage humanity's future, though it would come at a great cost. On the surface of New Terra, Victor Hale paced the length of his private office, his eyes flicking between the various reports streaming across his desk. The war was not going as planned, but he had expected resistance from the alien coalition. In fact, he had welcomed it. War had always been the way of mankind, the crucible through which true greatness was forged. But his enemies within humanity itself, that he had not anticipated. The door to his office slid open, and his chief of staff entered, face pale. "Mr. President, we have reports that General Lee has gone dark. He's en route to Earth." Hale's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, gone dark?" "He's not responding to any of our communications, sir. There are rumors that has a broken bar aligning with the Resistance." Hale's face contorted with fury. "The Resistance? Traitors, all of them. They would rather bow to the alien filth than see humanity rise to its rightful place." He slammed his fist onto the desk. "Send the order. General Lee is to be apprehended the moment he sets foot on this planet." The chief of staff hesitated. "And if he resists?" Hale's voice was ice. "Then he will be executed." The Sovereign landed in the shadows of New Terra's capital, far from the main spaceports to avoid detection. General Lee stepped out, flanked by his most trusted officers, each of them grim-faced and armed. He had no illusions about what awaited him here. Hale's forces would be looking for him, and the Resistance would have to act swiftly. Elena Torres met him in an underground bunker, where a small contingent of Resistance fighters had gathered. She looked tired, her once sharp features worn by the strain of leading an underground rebellion in the face of overwhelming odds. But her eyes burned with determination. "We don't have much time," she said, handing him a data chip. "This is everything, a proof of Hale's dealings with criminal factions, selling off military assets to line his pockets. We need to get this to the public." Lee took the chip and nodded. "We'll expose him, but we also need to stop him from using the Annihilator. If he fires that thing, it's over for all of us." Elena glanced around at her fighters. "We have a plan. It's risky, but we're going to infiltrate the command center where Hale is controlling the weapon. Once we're inside, we'll disable it and take him down." The command center was a fortress, heavily guarded by Hale's elite soldiers. Lee, Elena, and their small team moved through the shadows, bypassing security with a combination of resistance intelligence and Lee's insider knowledge of the military protocols. As they approached the central control room, alarms blared. Hale's forces had been alerted to their presence. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the sterile corridors as the resistance fighters engaged with Hale's loyalists. Lee pushed forward, his heart pounding, until they reached the door to the control room. Inside, they found Hale, standing before the control console for the Annihilator, his hand hovering over the activation switch. "You're too late," Hale sneered. "With one press, I can destroy the entire alien coalition." "And us along with it," Lee replied, stepping forward with his weapon drawn. "This war is over, Hale." Hale's eyes glinted with madness. "Over? It's only just begun. Humanity will rise from the ashes as stronger, greater than ever before." Lee didn't wait for him to press the button. He fired, a clean shot that dropped Hale to the ground before he could trigger the weapon. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena stepped up beside Lee, staring down at Hale's lifeless body. "It's over," she said quietly, though the weight of the war still hung heavy in the air. Lee nodded. "For now." Weeks later, the ceasefire was signed. Humanity, though scarred and diminished, had avoided complete destruction. Under Elena Torres' leadership, efforts to rebuild began, but the galaxy had changed. The alien coalition, wary of humanity's potential for destruction, enforced harsh reparations and disarmament protocols. But there was hope. Elena knew that while humanity had fallen, they still had a chance to rise again, this time, not through dominance, but through unity and peace. As she stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt space station, gazing out at the stars, she made a vow: never again would they allow one man's ambition to bring the universe to the brink of collapse.